What's going on, you guys? This is Outriders, and I'm going to be giving you guys another Anomaly Trickster build video. So this build video I'm going to be giving you guys is going to be a solo Eye of the Storm build. So you can actually use this for pretty much any content in the game. It doesn't just have to be for Eye of the Storm, since Eye of the Storm is the hardest thing in the game to solo. But yeah, this build is pretty insane damage-wise and survivability-wise. You're able to do a lot of high burst DPS. It's not going to be nowhere near as much. You're not going to be able to hit like a 1.7 to a 1.9 mil like you can with the legendary gear set, but with this build you're still able to do at least 1.2 to 1.6 mil damage with a temporal blade when you have everything procced. And with this, the way this build works is you want to be able to spam your abilities as fast as you can, as well as integrating your melee attack in with the mix, because you're using a mod in this certain build that you'll see in a bit. But yeah, I mean, this build is pretty freaking insane. I definitely enjoy using this one over my legendary one, but the legendary one does have a much better crowd control aspect to it, as well as the AoE, because you do get to use Time Rift. With this, we're not able to use Time Rift, but the thing is, Time Rift isn't really so useful in the Eye of the Storm because there's not that many enemies to use the Time Rift against. So yeah, but let's just go ahead and get right into it. So we're gonna go over all three weapon types. Your primary is going to be the Molten Idola. The Molten Idola is a legendary one-shot rifle variant, and the main mod you get on this is called Ravenous Locust, which is actually really good. It's a nice damage over time ability, or damage over time mod. It'll do 258.4k damage over time, and it's a pretty good AoE as well. It's a 6-meter radius of an AoE, so anyone that goes within its radius will also take damage as well. But this is not the biggest thing. The best thing you want to put on this rifle is going to be Grand Opening. Grand Opening works on any one-shot variant rifle the best, because it's just one shot and you automatically reload, and then you just shoot again and automatically reloads. You get the Grand Opening from the Darkness Chamber shotgun. It's a legendary shotgun. So when you do end up getting the Darkness Chamber and you do end up dismantling it eventually, make sure you do put the Grand Opening on the Molten Idola, so that way you're going to be able to put out as much damage as possible. You don't need any firepower in order for this weapon to actually be really good. This is the weapon I use when I'm using it to clear enemies, like the little enemies that have a little bit of health, so I don't have to waste an ability on them. Or you can use it on enemies that have pretty low health and you don't really want to waste an ability on them. So what I normally do is I would freeze enemies with my pistols and then switch to the Molten Idola and just quick shot them and then switch back. So like when the reload animation starts to happen, when it gets about halfway, then you can switch your weapon back, and your weapon should be fully reloaded when you switch back to it. So the next weapon is going to be another rifle one-shot variant. So it's not going to matter what stats you have on it or what the other mod is going to be. You're just going to use this as a scrap grenader. So the reason why you need this scrap grenade mod is because with this, you're going to be able to destroy the storm orbs in one shot with the scrap grenade. You do have to angle it in a certain way, but it's not too bad, especially if you're kind of close to the storm orbs. And the storm orbs is something you're not going to see until the boss phase. The boss is going to summon them. He spawns 2 of them. So being able to just one-shot them with the scrap grenade is going to help a lot. You wouldn't have to actually worry about using, like, actually bursting it down or anything. So I would highly recommend just getting any one-shot rifle variant and just throwing on scrap grenades, so that way you can do that. It'll just make the boss phase a lot easier. So here's one of the pistols. You're going to be using 2 different pistols, but the first one that I have does have Weapon Leech, Status Power, and Skills Life Leech, Mark of the Stake, and Snow Squall. I use this pistol for most of my builds anyways, because it's just incredibly good because of the fact that you can freeze and burn the enemies. Burning the enemies will allow you to get your healing because of Status Power and Skills Life Leech, and then Snow Squall will allow you to just freeze the enemies. So the higher your Status Power, the longer they're frozen for. This weapon has helped a lot, not just in the Eye of the Storm, but in just expeditions alone, because when an enemy is frozen, that's just less time they're not hitting you and more time you actually being more aggressive. So I would highly recommend you getting a full auto pistol and then just being able to have either one or the other mod, so that way you can put the other mod on, and then trying to get those 3 stats does help a lot as well. So the next pistol is going to have Ultimate Vulnerability and Mark of the Stake. You want to make sure you can get Mark of the Stake on here and then throw on Ultimate Vulnerability bullets. The reason why you need Ultimate Vulnerability is because that's a 15% damage increase for yourself. Now, it was nerfed from 30% to 15%, but the devs did say that they're thinking about reverting it back to 30%. We're not 100% sure. So eventually it might be back to 30% more damage, or it might stay to 15%. But regardless, it's just more damage in general. This is the pistols I switch to when it comes to the boss fight. So after I get to the behemoth, so not the behemoth, the broodmother, that's going to be the 3rd fight I do. When I get to that phase, I switch to these pistols. After I clear the ads, I switch to these pistols, go and kill the broodmother with these pistols as fast as I can, go back to the monolith, and then wait for the boss to spawn, or once the monolith is done, and then I use these pistols on the boss. And not just the boss, I use it on the ads that he spawns, because you want to be able to kill everything as quick as possible. So being able to get that vulnerability bonus is going to help a lot, as well as having that Mark of Stake. The freeze won't matter so much anymore, because not many enemies on this phase is going to be frozen for so long. So now for your headgear, pretty much all of your gear is still going to be the same as what I had shown you on the legendary gear set video. So with the gear set though, you're still going to be using Edge of Time and the same 2 purples for your feet and your gloves. For the mods, I'm using something different now. I'm using Untamed Power. For those of you that have seen my epic gear video where I use the Untamed Power, you will know that Untamed Power is a very, very, very powerful ability. It scales off of your base anomaly power, so 30% of your anomaly power. And it's just, I mean, it does a lot of extra DPS for you, basically. So the way Untamed Power works is anytime you use any other ability, including your melee attack, a burst of damage pops out. So being able to have a set rotation for yourself is going to allow you to put out as much DPS as possible. So like for me, I have my keybind set to Q, E, and F for my abilities, and then mouse button number 4 for myself to use melee. So I would normally use Q to use Hunt the Prey, and then I melee and shoot at the same time, and I shoot, reload, melee, and then I use E so I can throw the Venator's Mark, FF so I can use double Temporal Blade, and then melee and shoot again. So you gotta try to mix in the melee and the shooting in at the same time, so you can keep the enemy vulnerable as well as being able to reload, so that way you can get the extra damage to burning targets. So I know the rotation sounds really confusing, but once you get it, it's kind of like a muscle memory, so it gets easier. But just watching it and just hearing me explain it is gonna sound really confusing and seem really confusing. Or if anything, you can just do what I ended up doing before, is just spam anytime you see your skills off cooldown, and just spam. Next up is going to be the chest piece. So the chest piece is going to have, you want to put Cut Loose on here. Now you can have an alternate option if you don't really care too much for the cooldown, but I would highly recommend having the cooldown so you can increase your DPS with this, because I had figured, you know, even though more anomaly and more damage percentage is technically higher hits, having that faster cooldown for Temporal Blade is going to be much more DPS, because it cuts the Temporal Blade down from 8.7 seconds or 8.6 seconds down to 6.9 second cooldowns. So it's almost nearly 2-second cooldown. But if you don't care for the cooldown, I would recommend using Perseverance Shield. Perseverance Shield is like an extra survival buff. And the reason why it's so good is that's what I actually used on my first clear, was the Perseverance Shield instead of Cut Loose. But I ended up switching to Cut Loose once I kind of figured, you know what, I don't need this extra shield, but the extra shield does help. Not only that, for the Trickster, having shield on gives you 5% extra damage mitigation. So it's not a bad idea, but for me personally, Cut Loose is a better option. Now for your pants, you're going to want to use Captain Hunter, and obviously you get Temporal Slice. But Captain Hunter is obviously going to be needed because it's just a 25% increase to all elites, which means bosses are included. Anything that has a skull on the map is an elite. But yeah, these are the only things that really didn't change from the Legendary build video. For the gloves, I have Slasher and Bullet Kindling. Bullet Kindling is what I'm going to be making use of the most because enemies are pretty much always going to be on fire, giving me that 20% more damage against enemies afflicted by burn. And then Slasher is just really good because it's an extra temporal blade, so that increases your DPS by 2 times just because of that. So having both of them is going to be really nice. And then for the stats, Anomaly Power, Cooldown, and Status Power, both on purples. For the Legendary, it's still the same Anomaly Cooldown, but it's Scale Life Leech. Now the last thing is going to be for your boots. For the boots, it's going to give you Emergency Stance and Phantom Dash. For Phantom Dash, this helps a lot because it allows you to dash through the enemies as well as giving you a faster dodge animation. So it replaces the dodge roll with an actual like a small teleport. What sucks though is you're not able to like replace vaulting over with just dashing through. That would have been a really nice upgrade, so that way I didn't get stuck in animation vaulting over something. But Emergency Stance is a very clutch and very useful perk or mod because it basically is a huge lifesaver. What's going to happen is when you get down to 30% health or less, Golem Protective procs, and then it gives you a 65% damage mitigation, making your survivability go extremely higher. Now for your abilities, you're going to be using Hunt the Prey, Venator's Mark, and Temporal Blade. As you can see, all of my cooldowns are within 6 to 7 seconds. Hunt the Prey being 6.9, Venator's Knife being at 6.3, and Temporal Blade being at 6.9 seconds. The reason why you want to use these 3 is because of the fact that they have the fastest ability use, as well as being able to have the fastest cooldowns. Now, the Cyclone does have a faster cooldown than the Hunt the Prey and Temporal Blade, but Cyclone does last longer, which makes you more susceptible to taking damage and end up dying. Now, the reason why you're going to be using Hunt the Prey is just so you can teleport to the enemies, as well as being able to close the gap between you and the enemy. It's also nice against the Reapers when they spawn, because when they jump at you, you can try to dodge out the way. You have to try to time that perfectly and then teleport to them because it'll apply slow. It doesn't apply slow, that's the Venator's Mark, but you can teleport to them. And then Venator's Mark or Knife is what applies slow, but that's not what makes this the best. It's also really nice because it can do up to 19.3k damage, as well as doubling your first hit on them. Now, since you're going to be using Untamed Power and Fire, both of those, whatever hits first is going to proc the Venator's Knife double damage, which is a little unfortunate because Temporal Blade can technically hit well over 2 mil with burn, vulnerability active, as well as your extra class mods or perks. With the Venator's Knife, you'll hit well over 2 mil. You get maybe like a 2.8, 2.9 mil hit. But I mean, it's okay. Venator's Knife, you're only really using this because of the fact that it has a low cooldown and it can do extra damage, as well as doubling anything that you end up doing to them. Temporal Blade, obviously you're just going to use this because it's just the strongest ability in the game, as well as a very fast cooldown when you do use the 20% extra cooldown reduction. And then not only that, it also interrupts targets as well as paralyzing them. So if you see a crawler, when you do have to go against the crawlers, there's going to be 2 of them. When you see it's about to do the overcharge ability, you can just use your Temporal Blade on them, and then it'll basically cancel it out. But yeah, these are the 3 abilities you're going to definitely want to use. Time Rift is not going to be a viable option when it comes to the Eye of the Storm, but when it comes to just regular expeditions, Time Rift is still a really good option, but you would need to replace 3 mods in order to make Time Rift actually useful. Now for the last section is going to be your class tree. As you can see, well, you can actually just follow the way my class tree is set up, but I did only switch one thing, which was the resistance piercing in the second node, and I switched it with life leech. Life leech is just going to be a little bit better because of the fact that it's a 6% increase in life leech, but it feels like it's a huge increase because it's not just towards skills, but it's towards your status abilities as well. So fire, and that extra 10% resistance piercing wasn't really needed, but I mean, you're getting an extra 45% anyways. You get the 25% from the one of the last 3 nodes, and you basically get 45% resistance piercing in total from the last 2 nodes or last 3 nodes. But yeah, like this is just going to be a lot better setup just for the Reaver set or Reaver tree for those of you that want to use this build. So that's pretty much it for this video. If this helped you guys out, then please go ahead and leave a like, comment, subscribe. If you have any questions or concerns, let me know down in the comment section. I'll try my best to help you guys out to the best of my ability. Now, I know that I've been posting a few Anomaly Trickster builds. I am still most likely going to be posting more the more often I find something new or something better for the build. I will end up posting it so that way you guys can also see it and experience the build, because I know a lot of people want to find something different for damage and clearing endgame rather than something like with the firepower build. I do know, just keep in mind, I acknowledge the fact that this is not going to out DPS a firepower build by any means. It's just not, it's not going to happen. But the fun factor of this build is there, and the fact that it's a viable build is what makes it even better, in my opinion. So for me personally, I enjoy this build because it's just faster and it's just more engaging, and I love teleporting around and just being able to melee everything. No, I'm not clearing chem lab or chem plant in like 7 minutes, but I can still get golds barely in there and get gold in a lot of other missions as well. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it with this video. If this helped you guys out, please go ahead and leave a like, comment, subscribe. This is all day to day 1. Have a good day, good night, and peace.